Excellent. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Today at the legislature, I introduced Bill 28 to propose changes to the Meat Inspection Act. Alberta is seeing an increase in the illegal slaughter of animals and the sale of uninspected meat. This poses a serious risk to the health and safety of all Albertans, especially children, seniors, and vulnerable Albertans. We have proposed two changes to the Meat Inspection Act to address these illegal activities and to ensure that Albertans remain confident that our food supply provides safe, high-quality meat. The first change is to move to larger fines for offenders under the Meat Inspection Act. The previous fine was a maximum of $10,000 for an offense under the Act. The proposed change will increase the maximum fine to $100,000 for those found guilty of an offense under the Act. This is necessary because it has become increasingly apparent that the current $10,000 fine is not substantial enough to deter illegal activity. The second proposed change is to extend the time allowed to investigate and lay charges. The current time is 1 year following the date the offense took place. The proposed change will increase the limitation period to 2 years from the date an offense came to an investigator's attention. This would give us more time to thoroughly investigate complex cases and prosecute those who break the law. This has become increasingly important given the number of investigations have doubled in the last 2 years and cases grow increasingly more complex. Other Alberta laws follow the same 2-year time rule, so this proposed change would bring the Meat Inspection Act in line with that standard. The proposed changes will not increase operating costs for industry or the cost of inspected meat for consumers, nor does it apply to those who sell and distribute meat legally. These changes are important to deter illegal activity and ensure Albertans have access to safe, high-quality sources of meat. If we do nothing, we risk the health of Albertans and we risk harming Alberta's entire livestock and meat processing industry. To be clear, the sale of uninspected meat in Alberta is illegal. Any meat or meat product that is sold or distributed in the province must come from an inspected slaughter facility, abattoir, or processing facility. Inspectors are on site during slaughter at licensed abattoirs to conduct inspections before and after every slaughter. Alberta licenses 121 abattoirs that produce inspected meat under the supervision of provincial meat inspectors. And we have 65 meat inspectors and meat specialists who help with licensing, facility inspections, and surveillance. I want to be clear in saying that Alberta has the highest level of food safety standards in the world. We are extremely proud of our licensed operators who uphold these standards and maintain our world-class reputation in food quality and safety. These changes are aimed at those who contravene these principles and put the reputation and economy of our meat sector at risk. Inspection ensures that the meat is safe for Albertans to consume. Now, it's worth noting that Albertans have secure access and safe inspected meat. For Albertans who are unsure about their supply of meat, I encourage you to buy from licensed operators and retailers. Consumers can also find a listing of meat suppliers through a directory of licensed slaughter operations, including abattoirs, mobile butcher facilities, and on-farm slaughter operations online at alberta.ca. To summarize, Alberta has proposed an update to its laws to address illegal slaughter and sale of uninspected meat by increasing maximum fines to $100,000 for each offense. Time to investigate and lay charges is being extended from 1 year from the date of the offense to 2 years from the date the offense comes to the attention of an inspector. We are increasing penalties for those who do not comply with Alberta's food safety standards as upheld by the Meat Inspection Act. Thank you. I will now invite Jim Johnson with Alberta Prairie Meats to say a few words about how these changes would support and protect his industry.
Thank you. Yes, again, Jim Johnson, proud owner of Alberta Prairie Meats down in Dutchess, Alberta. We currently slaughter 60, 70 head of cattle a week, about 3,000 a year plus, and I'm definitely proud of the reputation and the customer base we've developed. I started my career way back 1980, started in the federal plant at the local Lakeside. Now it's changed hands 2 or 3 times since then, but started in the federal system and worked there for 20 years until moving on, buying my own business from there. So I guess I have been around the block a little bit after 45 years of being in the industry. We're a provincial establishment, Alberta Prairie Meats, meaning we have an inspector on hand for all slaughter days. We work under provincial health regs. Provincial plants tend to be the safety net of the protein industry. When crisis hit the federal plants like BSE or COVID, it seems like we're there to pick up the slack, pretty high demand. COVID created an extremely high demand on the abattoirs, limiting hook space availability for producers. This crisis is what gave rise to the on-farm slaughter program. It was rationalized that as long as it was only allowed between licensee and producer for the producer's direct use, what harm could it do? And yet here we stand today. 2 hyphenated terms separate the legitimate abattoirs from operations under an on-farm slaughter permit: ante-mortem and post-mortem, meaning an authorized inspector checking the animals before slaughter and after slaughter to verify they are fit for human consumption. The lack of these 2 steps has now potentially set back the industry by about 40 years. The measures announced by the minister are a good first step, the heavy fines. Hopefully we continue from there. We need accountability with severe ramifications for any abuse of the program. The Alberta meat industry has worked too damn hard, earning a solid reputation, to have it jeopardized by a few individuals who seek profit by any means. Now, have no doubt our current provincial legislation was built on a few mistakes. We learned from those mistakes. We made rules. We set up programs. We did everything we could to enhance the safety of our products. And I strongly believe our provincial plants put out a product second to none nationwide. Strong legislation, such as witnessed today, is needed to maintain our hard-won reputation. Thank you. Now, Lynn McMullen, food microbiology.
Thank you, Jim. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Lynn McMullen. As a professor emerita of food microbiology at the University of Alberta, having spent the past 35 years of my career focusing on meat safety and quality, I enthusiastically endorse the proposed legislation to the Alberta Meat Inspection Act and Regulation. This change in legislation will help reduce the incidence of illegal slaughter and sale of uninspected meat. By increasing fines, operators will be held more accountable, and it will reduce the likelihood that they will continue to operate after being charged with an offense under the Meat Inspection Act. Inspection of animals prior to slaughter and harvest of meat is important to protect consumers. We need inspection and to ensure that the animals going into this meat supply do not or have no animal diseases. We don't want meat from diseased animals entering the food supply. We have to ensure that these animals are healthy. That is why we have inspection. In addition, post-mortem inspection is important to ensure that during and after the harvest of meat from a carcass, that the meat is handled in a manner that reduces the risk of foodborne illness for consumers. This includes proper cleaning and sanitation of facilities and proper temperature control for the meat as it is stored. These help to reduce food safety risks for consumers. With illegal slaughter operations, I know that this is not the case. In Alberta, there have been many discoveries of illegal slaughter operations where the meat is harvested and is not handled in a manner that reduces food safety risks for consumers. I wholeheartedly support this change in the legislation to increase the fines for the well-being of Alberta consumers. Thank you. And I now turn it over to, Mike Bowman. Who will introduce himself. Thank you.
Morning. My name is Mike Boma. Just to give you a little bit of a background, I do not own a meat facility. It's been 20 years I've spent in a family business prior to getting into what I just left, and it was 33 years of meat inspection. So I hear the sides of both asking and talking about this. The legislation that's being presented today will be well received because the industry itself needs proper guidelines. It's not saying that the ones previously were not good. It's like said before by Jim. We've all seen that when we first start, we make legislation to what we think is best. And as it progresses, so does our legislation. So does our understanding of how the industry is working. And I think these steps that the minister is presenting today are a good step forward. We can always say there's more to be done, but without having a start point, there's nothing gets done. So from my perspective, this is an excellent starting point that we need to take forward. And from that, move what we have and what we understand of our industry to the next level. It is a good industry. A lot of people really, truly depend on the industry for their livelihoods, for their families. It is something that we all take for granted a lot of times, that we do not really stop to think of where our food comes from until a crisis happens. This new legislation helps the regular Albertan understand that the government is serious and wants to improve the health for everybody. Thank you. The next person I would like to call is Doug Roxing. Doug?
Well, good morning. My name is Doug Roxburgh. I'm a beef producer from Rimbey, Alberta, and I'm currently the Vice Chair of Alberta Beef Producers. Thank you, Minister Sigurdsson and the Government of Alberta, for taking steps to support Alberta's livestock industries. This support is essential as we work to safeguard the quality and safety of Alberta's beef. Alberta Beef Producers stands behind stronger penalties for illegal slaughter practices. Food safety isn't just a priority for us, it's a necessity. Our farmers and ranchers work hard every day to produce high-quality beef that consumers know and trust. And maintaining the trust for us is crucial. Here in Alberta, we are privileged to enjoy safe, dependable beef, and we want every burger and every steak to meet those standards. To make this happen, we rely heavily on healthy, sustainable supply chain that consumers can count on each and every day. With food prices rising and shortages of small and medium-sized packers in the province, we need solutions that don't sacrifice public safety or animal welfare, but instead strengthen the industry to protect consumers. We are proud of Alberta's beef, and our dedication of our producers put safety delivering world-renowned products to tables across the province, across the country, and across the world. Together, with the continued support of our leaders and politicians, we can ensure a future where Alberta's beef remains a symbol of quality, safety, and pride. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. We're going to now open the floor to questions. I will ask that you state your name and who you're working with, and you will have one question and one follow-up. I'll start on the floor first and then move to phones.
Hi, Sean Amato with City News. During the technical briefing, we were told about complex criminal organizations, not small farmers, that sort of thing, transactions up to $500,000. Can you talk a little bit more about the rise in that in Alberta?
Well, definitely that's why we're here today, to be able to strengthen the Meat Inspection Act so that we can deal with what we've been seeing as a bit of a concerning trend. As you can imagine, in 2022, we had 11 investigations, 29. This year so far, as of October 25th, we've got 55. The complexity of some of these investigations has increased, and that's why the limitation period we're expanding to 2 years from the date in which we're notified of an offense. That's going to allow a lot more time for our investigators to do a thorough investigation and make sure that they have the resources they need to be able to accomplish that in an appropriate time frame.
To play devil's advocate here, Alberta, your party often says this is the freest province. We don't like red tape. You know, we're not compelling people to get vaccines, so why, can you explain why not let people eat uninspected meat if they're aware and if they choose to make that choice for themselves and their families? Why is that not a good thing?
Well, what I want to talk about is the concerning trend that we're seeing right now, and that's why we're coming forward with this legislation to increase the fines. The sale of uninspected meat is what we're looking at right now as curbing. We don't want uninspected meat into our food supply chain. We want to make sure that Albertans have the confidence in their food supply chain, and we want to make sure that we protect the high quality food safety standards that exist in the province of Alberta. We have a reputation around the globe right now of the highest value commodities and of the highest food safety standards. That's something this government is solely committed to protecting now, today, and in the future.
Catherine?
Yeah, Catherine Rutkowski, Alberta Today. This is sort of the penalty side. I'm wondering, have you been looking at anything to cut off the opportunity for illegal meat sales, either by measures to address the affordability of beef, or improved education, or like what are you doing to make sure people don't turn to crime to sell meat?
Well, definitely education is a big part of this. And, you know, I'm standing at a podium today and we're trying to provide additional resources to make sure people are educated on where meat comes from in the province and make sure that they understand how important it is to buy from licensed facilities. Of course, as you mentioned, we have to strengthen the penalties for those that don't comply to make sure that our meat inspectors have the tools they need to be able to do their job. When we talk about the food affordability crisis, that's why our government has been pushing the federal government to get rid of the carbon tax. Our processors have seen massive costs passed down to them through taxes like the carbon tax that has driven up the cost of processing our food here in the province, that has pushed people closer to food poverty. That's why you see our government pushing back against the carbon tax. We want to make sure that we deal with that affordability issue. And like you said, unfortunately, because of where we're at today, it has moved some people to think that they can go purchase uninspected meat and that it is safe. What I'm here to say is it's not. If people are selling uninspected meat, we want to make sure that they're aware that they should be looking towards licensed facilities if they're looking to make sure that the highest food quality and safety standards are maintained.
And Jim did speak about how BSE, for example, was a really tough thing to overcome reputationally, and the industry has fought really hard for that reputation. Can you elaborate a bit on the risks to industry for their reputation, for their livelihood with this?
Yeah, absolutely. When you, like I said, Alberta maintains the highest food quality and safety standards in the world. That is something that our reputation is known around the globe, and that's really why a lot of our global trading partners look to Alberta to be able to purchase beef, pork, and many other protein sources. So we want to make sure that we protect that reputation. The hard work of our farmers and ranchers, our processors, the effort that they put in over decades is why we have that reputation. We want to make sure that we're doing everything as a government to be able to protect that on the world stage.
Yeah. On the enforcement side, I understand that these illegal operations are they move all the time. We don't know where they're happening. Do you think Alberta needs more meat inspectors to be able to find these operations, tackle the problem, and find them at the end?
Well, right now, as I mentioned, we got 65 meat inspectors and program specialists who support licensing, inspections, and surveillance. Of course, we've added one additional FTE to be able to aid with some of the increases that we're seeing right now. I think one of the greatest benefits within this change in legislation is the limitation period and increasing it to 2 years from the time that they're made aware of an offense. And that allows them to be able to do thorough investigations in a time frame that they were saying was necessary for them to do their job.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, my follow-up is for Jim and Doug. Maybe it's kind of like Catherine's question. It's what do you think is the risk for Alberta's beef industry and its reputation? What is the risk that this kind of illegal operation poses?
The risks, boy, it goes more than just plant level. It goes like with our customer base as well. I can't give up names, but I can say that one of my customers in Calgary was caught up in the sale of illegal meat. And I know what he went through, but then, of course, he did that for one source. We were supplying another source, and what it did, it cut off him as a customer for me. Basically, he was shut down, which I totally agree with. And I think it's almost like a carbon tax thing where it's not just what you see on the outside. It's different levels that it carries on through. So it eventually works everything right back down to the producer to, as soon as there's that non-confidence in the product, you're going to see the sales go down and things shift. And that's what we're trying to stay away from. So.
I think the only point I'd like to add is, currently we're here talking about this provincially, but ultimately, approximately 50% of the beef produced in the country of Canada is exported. And so we're sitting here talking today about how local abattoirs affect meat sales to people within the province of Alberta. But essentially, we've got teams of people that travel overseas, visit with countries like Japan, where they build international markets. And it's really, really important to understand that the reputation that we have both provincially and locally also extends and gets word across to a lot of our global trading partners, even into the United States, Mexico, and places like that. So with beef being a product that is highly traded, both across the border within North America and across overseas, the reputation that we build and we try to work to maintain here that we're doing provincially really does extend to global markets. And I think it's really important to understand that we need to think about this, from a provincial aspect, but also globally as well.
Thank you. We're now going to move to the phones just for timing reasons. So operator, can you please put through the first caller?
Sure. Your first question is from George Lee from McLeod Gazette. Please go ahead.
Hi. Thanks very much for this. I'm just wondering, there was an earlier mention of this being a good early or first step, and I'm wondering what that's referring to. Is there something more we should expect or something more that needs to be done in this area that this legislation doesn't yet address?
Well, I'll just address that. Every time we're seeing a trend on an increase like this, we're going to continue to make this a focus. To make sure that we push this trend line back down. Of course, we don't want to see any offenses happening. My goal is to get this rate down to 0. But this is a piece of legislation that we know is an important tool for us to be able to move in that direction. We're going to continue to work with our meat inspection officers to be able to check in with them and see the impacts of this in the future. Of course, we want to make sure that we're pushing this trend line in the right direction. So the government of Alberta has continued commitment to making sure that we have the safest food is more than apparent with the legislation we're doing right now, and we're going to continue that work in the future.
Do you have a follow-up?
I do. There was also mention that there was some kind of legislative change involving those who slaughter animals and I think maybe direct to consumer. I'm not sure if I'm right about that during COVID. And I'm just wondering, that seems to have led to some problems. I believe it was Jim Johnson who mentioned that. Could somebody expand on that, what those problems were? And is there a way of getting away from whatever that caused?
Well, that's directly related to our OFSO, so our on-farm slaughter, in which people can purchase directly on farm. That is a program that came a few years ago. Of course, when a new program comes out, There's an educational piece. Our inspectors are out there working to continue to educate and make sure everybody is coming into compliance. There's a few hiccups off the start, but I would say that our inspectors are doing a great job of making sure that our operators right now understand what standards they have to comply to ensure that food quality and safety that we expect here in the province.
We have time for a couple more questions, so operator, can you put through the next caller, please?
The next question is from Terry Reith from CBC National News. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. You touched on this on your last answer, but I would like to throw this to the minister and to Mr. Johnson as well, as he raised it. I have heard that the on-farm slaughter permits have created a gray area, a loophole, and that meat inspectors do try to work to bring people into compliance. But what I would like to ask directly is, are those permits being abused in the minds of the government?
Well, right now, as you can imagine, over COVID, we saw the increase of people, higher demand for individuals that wanted to be able to procure their protein source directly from on-farm. That's where the on-farm slaughter legislation came from, to be able to broaden and allow people to do so. I can assure you that with 65 inspectors and adding one additional, that we are working to make sure that everybody is in compliance, and we want everybody to understand that the penalties for abusing that program are now severe. It's $100,000 for those who are not in compliance. And that's why we're doing what we're doing today, is making sure that those individuals understand that these programs and this government will not allow abuse of these programs. We are committed to ensuring Albertans have the safest food supply possible, and we will continue to make sure that we put every resource possible to ensuring that happens.
Operator, can you put through the next caller, please?
Can I have? May I please have a follow?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Through Freedom of Information documents with Alberta Agriculture, as well as the Edmonton Police Service, I have seen some very egregious cases, including one where goats were being slaughtered in a garage in North Edmonton. No charges were ever laid in that. It's not clear why not, although charges were recommended. Other cases, which have been quite egregious again, where Alberta health inspectors do try to bring outlets into compliance, and they don't always work. Why is this compliance model in place? Why are we not going harder after the people that are doing that?
Well, that's why we're here today. We're strengthening the legislation, and we're strengthening the penalties, and also increasing the limitation period to allow our inspectors to do thorough investigations, so that we can bring those who are in non-compliance to a place in which we can levy fines against them. And $100,000 is something that we feel is fitting for those who do not comply with the Meat Inspection Act. And right now, today, that's why we're strengthening penalties right now, to make sure everybody's aware that if you are not in compliance with the Meat Inspection Act, there's going to be serious consequences to that.
Thank you, everyone.
But very few charges are ever laid.
Thank you, everyone. That's all the time we have today for questions.